Hey there, everyone. I really should learn never to go into a bookstore just for browsing, because it almost never works out that way. Today's book haul is massive. There is 24 books. I legitimately couldn't fit all the books in the thumbnail. There's that many. They were purchased over the course of a few weeks, not all at once. That's a bit too much. I don't recall a point in my book purchasing history that I've purchased that many books in such a short period of time. It's a new record for me. Wow. So, like my previous book hauls, most of these are vampire books, but there's a few that are fantasy, some are young adult, not just adult books. There's a bit of variety in here. This is going to be a bit of a long video, so let's dive right into it. First is New Moon by Stephenie Meyer. This is the second book in the Twilight Saga. I am slowly collecting the books in the Twilight series over time, so it will be one of the potential series I start once I finish reading the Vampire Chronicles. I was going to get the third book as well, but it wasn't at the bookstore at the time, maybe later on down the line. I did go to the bookstore just the other day and saw that there were no copies of the Twilight books there. I understand it's getting a resurgence of popularity due to the new book in the series, Midnight Sun, that's coming out August, I think? Sometime in August. So it might be hard for me to get more copies of the book for a while. So the next two books I'm going to show you here are from the young adult vampire series House of Night by mother-daughter duo PC and Kristen Cast. I have books 2 and 3, Betrayed and Chosen. And the series, for those who aren't aware, is following a young woman who has become a vampire herself, and she's gone to a special school, from what I understand, for vampires in training. And I don't know much else aside from that because I haven't read the series yet, and I don't want to look into it too much. Don't want to spoil myself. But it's a pretty long series. Like, this main series is 12 books long. Then there's 4 novellas. And there's a sequel series now, too, called House of Night Otherworld. That's got 3 books that are out and a 4th one that's coming in the near future. So I haven't decided if I'm going to be doing any of the other books yet. I would want to read these first. But this is one of the series that I'm most keen on trying to start reading once I finish the Vampire Chronicles. This book here, The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman, is one of only 2 books, I think, that I purchased recently that is not in a series of some kind, like 2 books or more type thing. This one, from what I understand it, the protagonist is a vampire, and then there's a new type of vampire that emerges somehow. That's what I gathered at the back. Yeah, it's like vampires like him or not like him. So that's kind of ominous. It was the name and the title that drew me to the book originally. I look forward to reading this. I don't know when I will, but I'm happy to have like the odd individual book that's not tied to anything else. I can just feel like I can pick up any time. Next is The Vampire Diaries. This is The Fury and Dark Reunion combined into a single volume. These are books 3 and 4 in The Vampire Diaries out of a total of 4 books in the original series. And I got the first 2 books in another single volume a while back, so that means I have all 4 books in that series now. So this might be one of the series I pick up when I finish the Vampire Chronicles. From what I understand it, there's this young woman named Elena who's caught in a love triangle between 2 vampires who are part of the same clan or coven or whatever. Again, I don't look into this stuff too much before I start reading. But it seems interesting, and I'm hoping at the very least it'll be a good read. Now, if you're a connoisseur of vampire fiction like myself, you're probably familiar with Kim Newman. He is known for his horror fiction, particularly Anno Dracula, a series of alternate history books in which what-if vampires had a very prominent role in major historical events. And I did not know until recently that he actually wrote some novels for the Warhammer horror brand under the pseudonym of Jack Yeovil. And that's what these books are right here. There are all four of these books from the series is The Vampire Genevieve. Alright, so this one is the first one, Drachenfels. Second book is Genevieve Undead. The third book is Beasts in Velvet. And the fourth book is Silver Nails. The first three books are actual novels, and then the fourth book is an anthology of short stories. So, I was pretty happy when I found these because I had just recently found out about them, and I found all four of these on the shelf in a single shopping run. The entire series on a single shelf. They weren't side by side, they were scattered all over the place, so it took me a bit to find them. But not only did I finish the whole series in a single shopping run, but these covers, these matching covers with all the awesome old style look and the red spray on the pages and whatnot, these are all brand new editions of these books as of 2019. So new series, brand spanking new look, perfect for my shelf. You can't get any better than that. You really can't. This one here is by Christopher Moore. He's a comedy writer, I believe, called You Suck, A Vampire Story. This is... I knew there were 3 books. I completely forgot that this is not the first book in the series. This is actually book number 2. But yeah, this is meant to be a very humorous take on the whole vampire fiction thing. Because this is not the first book, I am not picking up this series at all until I at the very least get book 1, if not book 3 as well. Because all 3 books have been out for a while, I prefer to... If a series is out and completed, I prefer to get every single book before I start reading, so I then can just blitz my way through it and not have to worry about stopping. So that is what I'm going to do before I actually start reading this. Those of you who are familiar with Deborah Harkness, you know about her All Souls trilogy, a series of books that follows a witch and a vampire who becomes her lover, and there's a live-action adaptation, a series on Sundance that exists now, I believe. Season 1, I think, is based off the first book in the trilogy. I only have book number 1. At the time I went to the bookstore, books 2 and 3 were not there. But I did find this book. This one is Time's Convert. It takes place in the same universe. And it is a story that, it's not... the story doesn't focus on Matthew Claremont, who is the main vampire character in the trilogy. But this one focuses on Marcus McNeil, who was a surgeon on the battlefields of the American Revolution. So, I don't know, because I haven't read any of the books yet, I don't know if this Marcus is a character who appears in the series at all. I do... with the exception of Matthew Claremont, who is a character in the series. I don't know anything else aside from the fact that this is a tale about Marcus becoming a vampire and his connection to this woman named Phoebe Taylor, who apparently, what's it say, that she's embarking on her own journey to immortality, which could mean anything. May not necessarily be vampires. Maybe she's a witch like Diana in the main series. If that's her name, I can't remember the names. I will eventually. Cut me some slack, okay? But anyways, I kind of like the cover of this. This was found in the main fiction section. This wasn't in horror or fantasy or anything, because I think it was meant to be written more along the lines of general literary fiction, which I'm not against. You know, vampires cross multiple genres all the time. It's interesting. I don't think I'll read this until I read the trilogy itself, though, just so I have a better context as to what's going on. It might not be necessary for all I know, but with some exceptions, I have to read books in publication order, unless there's like a specific reading order that the author or the publisher has gone. You read the books in this order to get the best entertainment out of it. So until I find out otherwise, this is going to sit on my shelf until I find and read the other books. Now, for this book haul, I decided to take another dip into fantasy. And there are two booktubers I follow that really, really like the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. So I decided to pick up the first book in the series, The Eye of the World. I really like how this particular edition of the book looks. Like, if I enjoy this, every other book in the series is going to match this. From what I understand, there are 14 books in the main series, plus there is a prequel, which the prequel for the books is going to get its own edition that looks like this summer sometime, either in July or August. So that would be nice, especially if I happen to enjoy this book quite a bit. For those who are not familiar with the Wheel of Time, I believe, at least in its earlier books, it does start off as kind of like not a copy of The Lord of the Rings specifically, but it is influenced by The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, and then it eventually develops into its own unique thing that steers away from its Lord of the Ring connections, which is interesting. I still haven't read The Lord of the Rings itself. I'm debating whether I should read it first before I read this. I don't know for sure if that's the case, but in any case, I've got this. This goes with the other first volumes in a fantasy series that if I read them and I like them, then I'll get the other ones. This next book is an urban fantasy romance. And if you've been following this channel for a bit, you know I'm not really a fan of romance, but you know I'm reading as many vampire books as I can, so I gotta get the sampling of the everything. And that includes the Night Hunter series, starting with Halfway to the Grave by Jeaniene Frost. The protagonist of the series, as you can see on the cover here, she is a half vampire or dhampir. I don't know if they call her a dhampir in this book or not. The summary and stuff, they all refer to her as a half vampire, so they probably don't use that term in this series. But she hunts vampires for the purpose of hoping that maybe one of the vampires she kills is her father, who ruined her mother's life. Probably killed her or whatever. And then she meets this vampire bounty hunter who calls himself Bones. And they're forced to work together. So naturally, because it is an urban fantasy romance, the protagonist, whose name is Cat and Bones, they're probably going to end up banging at some point. I mean, that's a given. That's how romance books work, right? That's how romance fiction works. I wasn't too sure about the cover at first when I first saw it online, but it's been growing on me a little bit. They've done a better job with the later covers in the series, but you know, for the starting book, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'll take it. I've seen worse. This next book is also an urban fantasy romance, by author Nalini Singh. This is Angel's Blood. This is the first book in the Guild Hunter series. I'm not 100% sure if there is going to be vampires in this series or not. The protagonist herself is a vampire hunter, so there's a chance vampires are going to show up. But according to the summary in the back, she's actually being hired to track down a rogue archangel. Yeah, she's hired by the archangel Raphael to hunt down an archangel gone bad, as it says on the back. So, who knows? I'm hoping there will be vampires in this. If not, this will be relegated to just the plain old fantasy shelf, which is not a bad thing, all things considered. I really like the lettering on this cover. I don't know about anyone else, but this is like, according to the copyright page on the inside, this is all custom lettering just for the title. Completely custom designed. So kudos to the publisher for deciding on that, because this is awesome. The rest of the cover is so, but the lettering on it, I love it. Alright, so another popular young adult vampire series that I've seen toted around, seen talked about online a fair bit, is The Vampire Academy. And I managed to find the first 2 books during a recent shopping run. The first book, the titular book of the series, Vampire Academy, and the second book, Frostbite. So there are 6 books in this original series, and then there is an offshoot series called Bloodlines. I think. It shows them on the back cover, so, but yeah, I heard there was a movie based on at least the first book. I don't know if I want to watch it. I heard mixed things. I'm not really one for watching movies anyways. I think I'll just stick to the books. But I do like the unity on the cover here. Like, I like this decision on the part of the publisher. I think this was a smart choice. I like it when there's unity on the covers and it all looks the same. Said it before and I'll say it again for people who are new. All books in a series on my shelf have to match with rare cases in which that's not possible. The other thing I think is interesting about this is the summary is on the inside of the cover because they have like a promo on the back. But there was a video earlier on my channel in which I talked about from European mythology how there's different types of vampires. There's Moroi and what's the other type? Strigoi. Moroi and Strigoi. And this series actually takes that mythological stuff and it implements this in this. The protagonist is a Moroi or mortal vampire princess. And then the Strigoi, who are the undead vampires or the immortal vampires, are the ones that are after this princess. So I'm really interested to read it based on that alone, if nothing else. Even if that's the only pulling from the mythology, I think it would be interesting just to see what else is in there, because if they started with that, what else could be in here from European vampire mythology they might have mixed in? Maybe nothing, maybe a bunch of other stuff, I don't know. But it's cool, it sounds interesting, I like it. The next 3 books I'm going to show you here are a trilogy, a young adult trilogy by Filipino author Rin Chupeco. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. It is the Bone Witch trilogy, and it's not, if it's connected to vampires at all, it's only like because they're undead. And the Bone Witch trilogy follows a girl who is skilled in necromancy. And there are people who really don't like necromancy who want to attack her. And I just have to say, all 3 books are in paperback. This is the Bone Witch itself is the first book. Then we have the Heart Forager, the second book. And then we have the Shadow Glass, the third book. And I just have to say, I love the unified look on these covers. I mean, look at this. The shininess on it, all that jazz. You got the same with the red on cover number 2. And then you got this for the first cover. Like, isn't that awesome? I think it's awesome. I really like it. And the thing that drew me to these books, aside from the covers being freaking amazing, is the fact that being focused on necromancy, and necromancy is not really tackled in fiction or media in general that much, and if it is, it's always a negative thing. And this is like a protagonist, a young girl who is trying to use necromancy to do good, so far as I'm aware. So it'll be interesting to see not only this author's interpretation of necromancy, but how the protagonist is going to use this to the benefit of the people around them. And maybe there'll be evil necromancers she'll fight against too. I mean, I'm only guessing. I don't know much about the series outside of what I already said, but that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty awesome, I think. Or even fighting against other magic users who use other types of magic who thinks she's evil because she's a necromancer, and how she would fight against that. That would be pretty neat as well. Next, I have a book by a Canadian author, a Canadian author she's not Canadian by birth, but she is a Canadian citizen. It is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And I first learned about Silvia because she wrote a vampire novel that I'm trying to get my hands on, but it's out of print. So I have to find it secondhand from somewhere. But this one is one of her more recent books, and I think you can probably tell by the look on the cover, but this tackles Mayan mythology, Mayan deities, and the protagonist of this book, the protagonist of the book joins up with a Mayan death god. It's what they call a one-of-a-kind fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. That, to me, sounds really, really cool. I don't know about anyone else, but I love it when mythology and folklore from other cultures gets brought into literature. I don't think we do this enough, and I really get irritated when, because I follow Silvia on her Twitter account as well, and the amount of times that she has struggled, as she and her agent have struggled to get her books sold because no one wants to read about somewhere in Mexico, or no one wants to read about Mexican mythology. It's like, shut the fuck up, publishing. Like, let these people publish their books. You don't know if people are going to want to read them if you don't publish them. Like, seriously, this looks pretty freaking amazing. Oh, and don't let the cover deceive you. This is an adult book. This is not a young adult book. If your young adult likes reading it, great, but it's not a young adult book. She's had to correct people many a time about this, and it's like, just because your young adult can read this book and enjoy it doesn't mean it's a young adult book. Just because the author's female doesn't make the book young adult. Get that out of your heads right now. Alright, so for the end of this video, I wanted to save these books for last. These are 4 books by Black authors that I've picked up recently. I'm going to talk about the ones that I don't know quite as long or as well first. Because there's a couple of them, 2 of them that I've already known of for like several months, at least, that I've picked up recently, and then the other 2 I only just recently discovered when I was looking for more books by Black authors. So, I'm going to start with the newer books, with the exception of 1 book. These are all young adult books, by the way, just so you're aware. The first book I'm going to talk about is Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a duology. Yeah, the Akata Warriors, the sequel, it shows on the back right here. But the protagonist is, lives in Nigeria, but was born in New York City. The one thing that I find is interesting about this book is that this is a Black character, but she has albinism. Where do you read about people with albinism? You don't. It's like a fetish. It's like, it's never appearing in fiction. I find that very, very cool. And it's like, it's bad enough that being a Black person, her life is difficult, but albinism, oh boy, like, it's so rare that like the back of the book says, like, she doesn't seem like she fits anywhere. And that is quite powerful to read, actually. Becomes part of a quartet of magic students studying the visible and invisible, learning to change reality. After she discovers that she has latent magical powers. So, yeah, this is... And then there's magical authorities that ask them to help track down magical criminals. It just... Wow, there's so much about this book that is interesting. I love this. And the fact that there's a sequel, like, I was disappointed that I couldn't find the sequel on the shelf when I found this. I was really disappointed. I wanted to pick up both books at once, but, you know, the bookstore is kind of slim right now, so take what I can get, I suppose. This next book is by Tochi Onyebuchi, and this is Crown of Thunder. This is, let me see... this is the sequel to the book Beasts of Night. So this one, I'm not going to end up reading this one before I get the first book. Obviously, I want to read the first book first. The covers are pretty neat. It's hard to tell, but you can see the cover of the first book on the back of this one here. White with purple on the cover, which is kind of a contrast to how this cover looks. Ooh, there's dark magic in this. Civilians fleeing refugee camps. Yeah, so they're trying to, there's this queen that uses dark magic that is trying to assert her authority, it looks like, and then the protagonists, Taj and Aaliyah, are trying to learn about the secret of this woman's magic so they can try and stop her. It's a very, very interesting concept. Now, this next book I am really excited to start reading. The series is not done yet, so I don't need to worry about saving up all the books before I start reading it. I'll start reading it as soon as I can. This is A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney. This is an Alice in Wonderland retelling that consists of 3 books, 2 of which have been released. The second book is not in paperback format yet, so I'm not going to be buying that until it is. But yeah, I mean, the author, she said on her Twitter that she had a certain degree of influence on how the cover turned out. They did consult her about the elements they were putting on the cover. She got to help them decide on the model to use on the cover too. So the cover is awesome because the author had an input in it, and that is awesome. That doesn't happen very often in traditional publishing. And just like, yeah, so the cover for the second book is briefly shown on the back here. A Dream So Dark is the next one in the series. And just, wow. And the protagonist of the book, Alice, I mean, it's an Alice in Wonderland retelling, so of course the protagonist is going to be called Alice. But Alice is this time a black girl living in real-world Atlanta who juggles an overprotective mom, a high-maintenance best friend, and school, all while keeping the nightmares of her imagination at bay. One of the things that not too many people know about me is that even though I've never read the original Alice in Wonderland books by Lewis Carroll, some of my favorite all-time pieces of media are Alice in Wonderland adaptations. So when I found out about this, I was so excited. Oh, I can't wait to dig into this book. And then for this last book, if you haven't heard of this author, you've been living under a rock. The late, great Octavia Butler, and one of her most well-known books ever, Kindred. And Kindred is a time travel story, so it's very light on the sci-fi elements. It takes place in the 70s, it was published in the 70s, and the protagonist is a black woman who gets somehow thrown back in time multiple times to aid this white man from sometime in the 1800s, I think. I think it's about 100 years difference between their 2 times. I'm really intrigued on how this is going to turn out. Mostly from the standpoint of time travel in fiction is very, very tricky to do. Like, you see it all the time in sci-fi shows and whatever, like with Doctor Who or Stargate or whatever. I'm not even going to be mad if they don't even describe how it goes about, because I really don't see that as being part of the main elements here. Like, I think the main element here is helping a young man from 100 years ago during the time where, plantation owner, during a time where slavery was still a thing from the looks of what it's read on the back. Oh, that's neat. It includes a reader's guide in here too. There's some discussion questions and stuff like that in here too. I won't care much about that because I'll be reading it for the sake of that. Hopefully it'll be a fiction story that I'll enjoy, but I figured if I'm going to start reading Octavia Butler's work, I might as well start with her most popular book and then work my way from there. I originally found out about her because she also wrote a vampire novel called Fledgling, which unfortunately was not at the shelf of the bookstore, so I'll have to order that one myself later on down the line. But I will read this book first and see how it goes. Okay, that was all 24 books. They're sitting on my console right here now, now that I've gone through them. Alright, I have all the titles of all the books listed in the description below in case you don't remember or you want an easy way to look them up yourself. Feel free to discuss these books with me in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? Are you interested in any of these books? What do you think? And have you heard about the authors or series or books that I've showcased today? I'm really intrigued to discuss it with you. Alright, and with that, I would like to thank you all for watching. I post a new video on Tuesdays and Fridays. Have a good one, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye!